You will not believe what happens to the girl at the end. Make sure to like and subscribe so we can continue writing stories like this one. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.
Ella, with her sunshine hair and a smile that could chase away the clouds, loved to chase butterflies in the meadow. Ruth, quieter but just as brave, preferred the company of books and the shade of the old oak tree. They lived in a small cottage nestled beside their family's farm where the days were filled with chores and laughter. Their papa taught them how to tend the crops and their mama sang them songs as they helped with the animals. Life wasn't easy, but it was filled with love. Every morning, Ella would wake up first, her bright eyes scanning the horizon, looking forward to a new day of adventure. She'd nudge Ruth awake, and together they would sneak out to the fields, still clinging to the tall grass. They would help their papa gather eggs from the chickens, their small hands carefully cradling the warm treasures. In the evenings, after a long day of work, they would gather around the fireplace, listening to their mama tell stories of brave knights and faraway lands. Ruth, with her nose buried in a book, would imagine herself as a wise sorceress, while Ella dreamed of rescuing damsels in distress. They were inseparable, two halves of a whole, their bond as strong as the roots of the ancient oak tree in their yard. They imagined their simple lives would go on forever, filled with love and laughter. Little did they know, a shadow was creeping towards their peaceful valley, a darkness that would change their lives forever. The carefree days of chasing butterflies and listening to stories were about to become a distant memory. The shadow that crept into their valley came in the form of Baron von Hesse, a man as cold and cruel as the iron he wore. He rode into their peaceful land with a company of armed men, their horses kicking up dust that choked the very air. The Baron's eyes, like chips of ice, surveyed the land with a hungry gaze. He saw not homes and families, but resources and power. His first act was to declare the land his own, claiming it by an ancient, dusty decree that no one had ever heard of. The villagers protested, their voices trembling with fear and anger, but the Baron merely laughed, a harsh, grating sound that echoed through the valley. He demanded taxes, an impossible sum that would leave families starving. When the villagers couldn't pay, the Baron seized their land, their homes, and their livelihoods. Ella and Ruth watched in horror as their neighbors were forced from their homes, their faces etched with despair. Their papa tried to reason with the Baron, his voice pleading for mercy, but the Baron remained unmoved. "This land belongs to me now," he declared, his voice like thunder. "And anyone who defies me will face the consequences." He wanted the valley, every inch of it, and he would stop at nothing to get it. The Baron's arrival shattered the peace, replacing it with fear and uncertainty. The sisters knew, deep in their hearts, that their own family would not be spared. The darkness had arrived, and it threatened to consume everything they held dear. The blow fell harder than they could have imagined. It wasn't the Baron's soldiers who came for them, but their own uncle, Jedediah. He had always been a shifty man, with eyes that darted around like a trapped bird, but they never suspected him of such treachery. Jedediah had always seemed envious of their father's success, and the Baron, with promises of wealth and power, had clearly exploited that weakness. One starless night, Jedediah led the Baron's men to their farm. He knew the layout of the house, the secret hiding places, everything. Their parents were quickly subdued, their protests muffled by rough hands. Ella and Ruth clung to each other, their hearts pounding like drums in their chests. Jedediah's face was grim, but there was a glint of greed in his eyes. "It's for the best," he muttered, avoiding their gaze. "The Baron will provide for you." The sisters were dragged from their home, their pleas for mercy falling on deaf ears. They watched as their parents were bound and left behind, their faces etched with heartbreak. As they were hauled away in the Baron's wagon, Ella looked back and saw her father's tear-streaked face, a silent promise of rescue in his eyes. Ruth squeezed Ella's hand, her own trembling. They were alone, betrayed by the very person who should have protected them. The comfortable world they knew had vanished, replaced by a nightmare they couldn't wake up from. The wagon lurched forward, carrying them further and further away from everything they loved, towards an uncertain and terrifying future. The betrayal cut deeper than any blade, leaving a wound that would take a long time to heal. Life under the Baron was a living nightmare. The sisters were forced to work in the Baron's fields from sunrise to sunset, their hands bleeding and their backs aching. The food was meager, barely enough to keep them alive, and the nights were spent in a crowded, drafty barn with other captured villagers. The Baron's guards were cruel and unforgiving, quick to punish even the smallest infraction. Ella, despite her fear, tried to remain strong for Ruth. She told her stories of their home, reminding her of the happy days they had shared. Ruth, however, grew withdrawn, her bright eyes dimming with each passing day. The hope that had once burned within her seemed to be fading away. One day, the Baron decided to make an example of them. He accused them of laziness and ordered them to be whipped in front of the other villagers. The pain was excruciating, but Ella refused to cry out, her eyes fixed on Ruth's pale face. When the whipping was over, they were left bruised and bleeding, a stark reminder of the Baron's power. That night, as they huddled together in the barn, Ella whispered to Ruth, "We have to escape. We can't live like this." Ruth looked at her, her eyes filled with despair. "But how? We'll never make it." Ella squeezed her hand. "We have to try. We have to have hope." Despite the pain and the fear, a flicker of defiance ignited in Ella's heart. She knew that their survival depended on their ability to hold on to hope, to never give up, no matter how bleak the situation seemed. She would find a way to protect her sister, even if it meant risking her own life. The Baron might have taken their freedom, but he would never break their spirit. Cole was a man of the land, weathered and strong, with eyes that held the wisdom of the mountains and the gentleness of the plains. He owned a sprawling ranch just beyond the Baron's newly claimed territory, a place he had built with his own 2 hands after years of wandering. He valued honesty and hard work, and he had no patience for bullies or tyrants. He had come to the Baron's land to trade for supplies, unaware of the misery that had taken root there. As he rode through the village, he saw the fear in the eyes of the people, the despair etched on their faces. He saw the Baron's guards, their faces hard and unforgiving, their hands resting on their weapons. Then he saw Ella and Ruth. They were working in the fields, their small frames bent under the weight of heavy sacks. He noticed the bruises on their arms, the haunted look in their eyes. He saw the Baron watching them, a cruel smile playing on his lips. Something stirred within Cole, a deep sense of injustice and a fierce protectiveness. He had seen too much suffering in his life, and he couldn't stand by and watch these innocent girls be treated like slaves. He knew he had to do something, even if it meant risking everything he had built. The sight of the sisters' suffering awakened a long-dormant part of him, a part that believed in fighting for what was right, no matter the cost. He pulled his horse to a halt, his gaze fixed on the Baron and the 2 young women in the field. A decision had been made. Cole remembered his own past, a time when he was betrayed by those he trusted most. He'd been a young man then, full of dreams and naive trust. His business partner, a man he considered a brother, had cheated him, leaving him penniless and alone. The pain of that betrayal had hardened him, making him wary of others. He vowed never to let himself be vulnerable again. But seeing Ella and Ruth, their innocence stolen, their spirits crushed, stirred something within him that he thought he had buried long ago. He knew that helping them would be dangerous. The Baron was a ruthless man, and crossing him would have consequences. But Cole couldn't ignore the desperate plea in their eyes. He couldn't stand by and watch them suffer the same fate he had endured, the sting of betrayal, the loss of hope. He thought of his own sister, long gone, taken by illness when they were both young. He saw her in Ella and Ruth, in their resilience and their quiet strength. He imagined what she would have wanted him to do. That night, Cole lay awake, wrestling with his conscience. He knew that inaction would haunt him forever. He knew that if he didn't try to help them, he would be betraying his own values, his own sense of justice. He made his decision. He would buy their freedom. He would risk everything to give them a chance at a better life. He would not let the Baron's cruelty win. The memory of his own betrayal fueled his resolve. He would be the protector he wished he had had all those years ago. The next morning, Cole rode directly to the Baron's makeshift headquarters, a commandeered farmhouse on the edge of the village. He dismounted, his face grim, and strode inside, ignoring the wary glances of the guards. The Baron was seated at a large wooden table, counting coins. He looked up, his icy eyes narrowing as he recognized Cole. "What do you want, rancher?" the Baron sneered. "I want to buy those 2 girls," Cole said, his voice firm. The Baron laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Those girls are mine. They work for me." "Everything has a price," Cole replied, reaching into his saddlebag. He pulled out a pouch filled with gold coins, the savings of years of hard work. He poured the coins onto the table, the clatter echoing in the room. The Baron's eyes widened. "That's a lot of gold," he said, his voice softening. "But those girls are strong. They're worth more than that." "That's all I'm offering," Cole said, his hand resting on the butt of his revolver. "Take it or leave it." The Baron hesitated, his gaze shifting between the gold and Cole's determined face. He knew that Cole was a formidable man, and he didn't want to risk a confrontation. Greed ultimately won out. "All right," the Baron said, scooping up the gold. "They're yours." Cole nodded curtly. "I'll take them now." He turned and walked out of the farmhouse, his heart pounding with a mixture of relief and apprehension. He had bought their freedom, but he knew that the Baron wouldn't let them go without a fight. The hard part was just beginning. Cole found Ella and Ruth working in the fields, their faces etched with exhaustion. He approached them, his expression gentle. "Ella, Ruth," he said softly, "I've bought your freedom. You're coming with me." Their eyes widened in disbelief. Ella stepped forward, her voice trembling. Is it true? Are we free? Cole nodded. Pack your belongings. We leave immediately. The sisters quickly gathered their meager possessions, their hearts filled with a mixture of joy and fear. They knew that escaping the Baron's grasp would not be easy. As they prepared to leave, they saw Jedediah watching them from a distance, his face contorted with anger and regret. Cole helped them onto his horse, placing Ruth in front and Ella behind him. He urged the horse forward, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of pursuit. They rode through the village, the villagers watching them in silence. Some offered them hopeful smiles, others shook their heads in fear. As they reached the edge of the Baron's territory, they heard the sound of horses behind them. The Baron and his men were in pursuit. Cole spurred his horse into a gallop, racing towards the safety of his own ranch. The escape had begun, and their lives depended on their ability to outrun the Baron's wrath. The wind whipped through their hair as they sped across the open plains, the setting sun casting long shadows behind them. They were free, but the price of that freedom was a desperate race for their lives. The chase was relentless. The Baron's men were gaining on them, their horses faster and fresher. Cole knew they couldn't outrun them forever. He spotted a narrow canyon ahead, a treacherous path filled with rocks and shadows. It was a risky move, but it was their only chance. "Hold on tight," he shouted, guiding the horse into the canyon. The ride became bumpy and dangerous, the horse struggling to maintain its footing on the uneven terrain. The Baron's men followed, but their horses were less sure-footed, slowing their progress. As they navigated the canyon, they encountered other dangers: steep cliffs, loose rocks, and hidden crevices. Cole had to be constantly vigilant, guiding the horse with skill and precision. Ella and Ruth clung to him, their bodies pressed against his, their fear palpable. Suddenly, a rockslide blocked their path. The Baron's men were closing in. Cole knew they were trapped. He quickly dismounted, helping Ella and Ruth down. "We'll have to go on foot," he said, his voice grim. "Can you both run?" Ruth, weakened by her time under the Baron's rule, hesitated. "I don't know," she said, her voice trembling. Ella squeezed her sister's hand. "We'll do it together," she said, her eyes filled with determination. "We won't give up." Cole led the way, scrambling over the rocks, helping the sisters along. They could hear the Baron's men shouting behind them, their voices growing closer. They had to reach the other side of the canyon before they were caught. Their escape was far from over, and the dangers were only increasing. They were tired, scared, but driven by the hope of freedom and the unwavering support of Cole. Cole, Ella, and Ruth managed to escape the canyon and reach Cole's ranch just as darkness fell. The ranch was a haven, a sprawling expanse of land with sturdy buildings and loyal ranch hands. But Cole knew their sanctuary wouldn't last. Back in the village, the Baron flew into a rage when his men returned empty-handed. He smashed furniture, screamed threats, and vowed revenge. He saw Cole's act as a direct challenge to his authority, an insult he could not ignore. "That rancher thinks he can defy me?" he roared. "He will learn that no one crosses Baron von Hesse and gets away with it." He gathered his men, preparing for war. He declared that Cole's ranch would be his, that the land and everything on it would belong to him. He painted Cole as an enemy of the people, a troublemaker who threatened their way of life. He twisted the truth to suit his own agenda, stirring up hatred and resentment among the villagers. The Baron sent messengers to neighboring towns, seeking allies and reinforcements. He promised them wealth and power in exchange for their support. He was determined to crush Cole and make an example of him, to show everyone that defiance would not be tolerated. At Cole's ranch, preparations were underway. The ranch hands, loyal and brave, prepared their weapons and fortified the buildings. They knew that the Baron's army was coming, and they were ready to defend their home and their way of life. Cole, Ella, and Ruth watched as the ranch transformed into a fortress, a symbol of resistance against the Baron's tyranny. The range war had begun. Despite the looming threat of the Baron's army, life on the ranch continued. Cole believed in maintaining a sense of normalcy, a way to combat the fear and uncertainty that surrounded them. He assigned tasks to Ella and Ruth, giving them a purpose and a sense of belonging. Ella, with her natural warmth and kindness, helped with the cooking and tending to the injured animals. She brought a sense of comfort and hope to the weary ranch hands. Ruth, with her quiet intelligence, helped Cole with the ranch's accounts and learned to read maps, becoming an invaluable strategist. Cole taught them both how to ride horses and shoot, skills they would need to defend themselves. He treated them with respect and patience, becoming a father figure to them. He showed them how to mend fences, tend to the crops, and care for the land. He shared his knowledge and his love of the ranch, instilling in them a sense of pride and ownership. Working together, they strengthened the ranch's defenses, reinforcing the buildings and setting up early warning systems. They practiced drills, preparing for the inevitable attack. But they also found time for laughter and joy. They shared stories around the campfire, sang songs under the stars, and celebrated small victories. The ranch became more than just a place to live. It became a home, a sanctuary, a symbol of hope in a world consumed by darkness. Ella and Ruth began to heal from their trauma, finding strength and resilience in their new life. Cole, in turn, found a renewed sense of purpose in protecting them and building a future together. The bonds of loyalty and love grew stronger with each passing day, forging a family that would stand strong against the Baron's wrath. The range war began with small skirmishes, raids on cattle, and ambushes on supply routes. The Baron's men, fueled by greed and hatred, harassed Cole's ranch hands, trying to weaken their defenses and demoralize them. Cole and his men retaliated, defending their land and protecting their resources. One night, the Baron's forces launched a full-scale attack on the ranch. They stormed the perimeter, firing their weapons and setting buildings ablaze. The ranch hands fought bravely, defending their home with courage and determination. Ella and Ruth, armed with rifles, joined the fight, protecting the women and children. The battle raged through the night, the sky illuminated by the flames. Cole, a skilled marksman, moved from position to position, taking down the Baron's men with deadly accuracy. Ruth, using her knowledge of the land, directed the ranch hands, guiding them to strategic locations. Ella, with her unwavering spirit, provided medical aid to the wounded, keeping their spirits up. Despite their valiant efforts, the Baron's forces were overwhelming. They breached the perimeter, forcing Cole and his men to retreat to the main house. The house became a fortress, the last line of defense against the Baron's onslaught. The fighting was fierce and desperate, the outcome uncertain. The war was taking its toll, testing their strength, their courage, and their resolve. They knew that their survival and the future of their home depended on their ability to withstand the Baron's relentless assault. The bonds they had forged were about to be tested in the fires of war. As the siege of the main house dragged on, resources dwindled. Food and water became scarce and ammunition ran low. The ranch hands grew weary, their hope fading with each passing day. Some began to question Cole's leadership, suggesting they surrender to the Baron to avoid further bloodshed. Cole, despite his own doubts, remained steadfast. He reminded them of what they were fighting for, their freedom, their home, their way of life. He shared stories of his own past struggles, inspiring them to persevere. One day, Ruth discovered a secret passage leading out of the house, a forgotten escape route from a bygone era. She proposed a daring plan to sneak out under cover of darkness, reach a nearby town, and seek help from the sheriff. It was a dangerous mission, one that required courage and trust. Cole hesitated, unwilling to risk Ruth's life. But Ruth insisted, arguing that it was their only chance. Ella supported her sister, volunteering to go with her. That night, under the cloak of darkness, Ella and Ruth slipped through the secret passage, leaving Cole and the ranch hands to defend the house. They faced numerous challenges along the way, treacherous terrain, wild animals, and the constant threat of discovery. Their loyalty to Cole and the ranch was tested, as was their bond as sisters. They had to rely on each other, supporting each other through every obstacle. Their journey was a testament to their resilience and their unwavering commitment to their newfound family. They were determined to overcome the hardships and bring help back to the ranch, even if it meant risking their own lives. Cole, left behind to defend the ranch, found himself reflecting on his growing feelings for Ella and Ruth. He realized that they had become more than just people he had rescued, they had become his family. He admired Ella's unwavering spirit and Ruth's quiet strength. He felt a deep sense of protectiveness towards them, a feeling he hadn't experienced since the loss of his own sister. Ella and Ruth, in turn, began to see Cole as more than just their rescuer. They saw him as a protector, a provider, and a father figure. He was the strong, steady presence in their lives that they had been missing since their parents were taken from them. They trusted him implicitly, relying on his wisdom and his guidance. They remembered the way he had taught them to ride horses, his patient hand guiding them. They remembered the stories he had shared around the campfire, his voice calming their fears. They remembered the way he had defended them against the Baron's cruelty, risking his own life to ensure their safety. With each passing day, their bond grew stronger. They learned to anticipate his needs, to understand his moods, to share his dreams. They worked together seamlessly, supporting each other through every challenge. They knew that their relationship was unconventional, but it was built on a foundation of love, respect, and loyalty. They were a family forged in the fires of adversity, their bond unbreakable. They were determined to protect each other, to support each other, and to build a future together no matter what obstacles they faced. The love they shared was a beacon of hope in a world consumed by darkness. Just as Cole and his men were preparing for a final, desperate stand, they heard the sound of approaching horses. It wasn't the Baron's men, but a posse led by Ella and Ruth with the sheriff at their head. The sheriff, a tall, imposing figure with a stern gaze, had gathered a group of armed men to help defend the ranch. The Baron, caught between Cole's men and the sheriff's posse, was forced to retreat. He rallied his remaining forces for one last, desperate attack, determined to crush Cole and seize the ranch. Cole knew that this was it, the final showdown. He gathered his men, preparing to meet the Baron's charge. He looked at the faces of his ranch hands, seeing their fear and their determination. He knew that they were fighting for something more than just land and resources. They were fighting for their freedom, their family, and their future. As the Baron's forces approached, Cole stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the Baron. "This ends here," he said, his voice ringing with authority. "This land belongs to the people, not to you." The Baron sneered. "You can't stop me, rancher. I will take what is mine." With a roar, the Baron led his men into battle. Cole and his men met them head-on, the clash of weapons echoing across the plains. The fighting was fierce and brutal, the outcome uncertain. But Cole, fueled by his love for Ella and Ruth and his commitment to justice, fought with unmatched courage and skill. He knew that he had to defeat the Baron, not just for himself, but for the sake of everyone who had suffered under his tyranny. He had to win. The battle raged for what seemed like an eternity. The air was filled with the sounds of gunfire, the clash of steel, and the cries of the wounded. Men fell on both sides, their lives sacrificed in the fight for freedom and justice. Cole, with his skill and determination, fought his way through the Baron's ranks, his eyes fixed on his target. He finally reached the Baron, their faces inches apart. "It's over, von Hess," Cole said, his voice low and menacing. "Your reign of terror ends here." The Baron, his face contorted with rage, lunged at Cole, swinging his sword with all his might. Cole dodged the blow and retaliated, disarming the Baron with a swift move. He then knocked the Baron to the ground, his boot pressing down on his chest. "You're defeated," Cole said, his voice filled with triumph. "The people are free." The sheriff stepped forward, placing the Baron under arrest. The remaining Baron's men, seeing their leader defeated, surrendered. The battle was over. A cheer erupted from Cole's men and the sheriff's posse, their voices filled with joy and relief. The range war was over and peace had returned to the land. Cole had defeated the Baron, securing their future and bringing hope back to the villagers. He had proven that even the most powerful tyrant could be overthrown by the courage and determination of the people. The land was free again. With the Baron defeated and peace restored, life on the ranch slowly returned to normal. The ranch hands rebuilt the damaged buildings, mended the fences, and tended to the crops. The villagers, freed from the Baron's tyranny, began to rebuild their lives, grateful for Cole's courage and leadership. Cole, Ella, and Ruth found themselves closer than ever. They had faced unimaginable challenges together, and their bond had only grown stronger. They had become a family, bound not by blood, but by love, loyalty, and resilience. One evening, as they sat around the campfire, Cole turned to Ella and Ruth, his eyes filled with affection. "I never thought I'd find a family again," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "But you two have given me a new purpose in life. I'm grateful for your strength, your courage, and your love." Ella and Ruth smiled, their hearts filled with warmth. "We're grateful for you too, Cole," Ella said, squeezing his hand. "You saved us, and you gave us a home. You're more than just our rescuer, Cole," Ruth added. "You're our family." Cole smiled, his heart overflowing with love. He knew that they had a long and challenging road ahead of them, but they would face it together as a family. They would support each other, protect each other, and love each other no matter what the future held. Their family was a testament to the power of love, resilience, and hope. It was a beacon of light in a world that often seemed dark and unforgiving. They would continue to build their lives together, stronger and more united than ever before. Years passed. The ranch prospered, becoming a symbol of hope and resilience for the entire region. Cole, Ella, and Ruth worked side by side, building a thriving community where everyone was welcome and treated with respect. Ella, with her warm heart and compassionate spirit, became a beloved figure in the village, tending to the sick, helping the needy, and inspiring others to embrace kindness and generosity. Ruth, with her sharp intellect and strategic mind, became a trusted advisor to Cole, helping him make wise decisions and navigate complex challenges. Cole, with his strength and wisdom, continued to lead the ranch, protecting it from harm and ensuring its prosperity. He taught the younger generation the values of hard work, honesty, and compassion, instilling in them a sense of responsibility and a commitment to justice. Together, they created a haven where love flourished, where dreams came true, and where the spirit of hope never died. They had overcome unimaginable obstacles, but they had emerged stronger and more united than ever before. They often spoke of their past, remembering the dark days under the Baron's rule. But they never allowed those memories to define them. Instead, they used them as a reminder of the importance of freedom, justice, and love. As they looked to the future, they saw endless possibilities. They knew that there would be challenges ahead, but they were confident that they could face them together, as a family. They had learned that even in the darkest of times, there was always hope, and that with courage, resilience, and love, anything was possible. Their story became a legend, a testament to the power of the human spirit and the enduring strength of family. And so they lived happily ever after, their lives filled with love, laughter, and the unwavering promise of a brighter tomorrow.